Hello, everyone. I see we got a couple jumping in. Hi, everybody. Well, welcome to Red Planet Live. I am your host, Ashton Zeth. I'm elated to be hosting the Mars Society's podcast and leading the conversation about human exploration of the universe and the future settlement of Mars. As a longtime space enthusiast, I am passionate about STEM education and making humanity an interplanetary species. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and supporting Red Planet Live. Now, today's conversation includes a special guest who's close to home and close to our hearts, none other than the Mars Society Executive Director, James Burk. James, thank you for joining today.
It's such a pleasure to be here, Ashton, and thank you for inviting me on your awesome podcast, Red Planet Live. You guys are doing a fantastic job in representing the Mars Society very well.
Well, thank you so much. It really means a lot to hear that, and it's a pleasure to get to have today's conversation with you. For those that don't know, James is a founding member of the Mars Society and was the commander of the Transatlantic Mars Crew 261, which just finished their 12-Sol mission at the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah, which the Mars Society operates. James also leads the MarsVR virtual reality project and has led the Seattle chapter since 1998. And in 2021, he was elevated to the full-time position of executive director and now sees all the Mars Society programs and initiatives, works closely with Dr. Robert Zubrin and our many volunteers. So again, James, welcome back to the podcast. Excited to be chatting with you. And I'm really excited to hear about your recent mission to MDRS.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I've been part of the Mars Desert Research Station program as like the IT guy, and then later on helping with mission support for over 10 years. And this was my first time commanding a mission there. So it was super special for me. And my crew was an amazing set of individuals. Just the talent level of our crew was off the charts. They were all space professionals. We had 4 people from our French chapter. And that's a very large chapter. It's one of the biggest chapters for the Mars Society. My executive officer, the second in command, was Aline Ducati, who is one of the young leaders of the French chapter and works for the European Space Agency. She's a safety engineer at the Kourou launch site in French Guiana, which is Europe's version of Kennedy Space Center, where they launch all their big rockets. And the other crew members were also equally as experienced and amazing. Our crew greenhouse officer is a microbiologist named Cecile Renaud. She was off the charts, a great scientist. Her attention to detail was incredible. We ended up, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we had a really cool experiment that a lot of people didn't think we could do, that we did. We also had Julien Villamasson, who was our crew engineer. And this guy was amazing. He was running around fixing things, writing code, making sure the power system was monitored, fixing our EVA monitors so we could see where we were on EVAs. And he was an expert with the Garmin devices that we used. So he was great. And then we had another really amazing engineer, Erin Kennedy from Canada. She was working on a special experiment, this robot that is a Mars exploration rover that's powered by wind. And I'll talk about that. But yeah, and then our last 2 were Audrey, who is from the University of Paris. She's a pharmacologist, but with the space focus. And she had a couple of medical experiments we did. And then finally, Chris Davidson, who's our crew journalist. Chris, I'm not going to lie, Chris Davidson is the best journalist I've ever worked with. She's an artist and a journalist. And she's done work for National Geographic. And she chronicled our mission both with photojournalism and daily reports, and they're the best ones I've ever read about the MDRS.
Well, they all sound amazing. I can't wait to hear about, your various projects and your objectives and the research that you did while you're there. And yeah, shout out to the crew. I hope they're all tuning in today and going to hear us talking about them.
Yeah, some of them are still here in the U.S. as well, kind of exploring Utah and elsewhere. So yeah, I'm sure a couple of them are watching.
Excellent. Okay. Well, shout out to them. They're going to hear us. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I know you just came off your mission. So thank you for spending some time with us. But before we kick off the conversation, I have just a quick Mars Society reminder, which is that the Mars Society is thrilled to announce that their 26th annual International Mars Society Convention will take place this year from October 5th to 8th at Arizona State University in Tempe. This 4-day event will bring together scientists, policymakers, commercial space executives, government representatives, media, space enthusiasts to discuss the pressing topics related to space exploration, technology advances, and planning for the human exploration and settlement of Mars. Now, to ensure maximum participation, the Mars Society will employ technology platforms for in-person and virtual presentations, panel discussions, and debates. Attendees from around the world can join the conference, post questions, and interact with each other. Further details about the event, such as registration information, a list of confirmed speakers, suggested hotel accommodations, and requirements for the poster contest. Some have been released, more will be coming soon. So get ready to explore Mars with the Mars Society and stay tuned for the coming updates. So as James knows, we do a segment on the podcast called Question of the Day. And James, I'm particularly interested in your answer because I know you just came off your mission, so you may have a unique experience on this question. So for today's question of the day is, imagine you're about to take off on a long duration mission to Mars. If you could have any food, what would be your last meal on Earth before you launch?
I would have to go with surf and turf and maybe some fresh oysters as an appetizer because I'm not going to get those on Mars.
Yeah.
We actually had some like canned smoked oysters. That was a hit on our crew. We made some paella dish with that. But other than that, I'd have to go with the fresh oysters and some nice lobster and a nice steak.
That sounds like an excellent choice. I think a lot of people would agree with you. I think we've got some of those in the chat already as well. I think for my own, this would be a tough question, but I would have to pick like an Indian feast. That's butter chicken, lamb tikka masala, some saffron rice, garlic naan. I think that would make me feel real happy before taking off on a long mission. And you can't forget the Diet Coke. Got to have a Diet Coke in there.
That sounds really good, but I think we could probably make all that on Mars.
Okay. Hey, then I guess I've got something to look forward to. If I ever get the chance to go, I can still have that last meal on Mars. Well, before we jump into questions with James, I just want to quickly remind our audience that's listening, if you have a question for James, please post that in the chat. I would love to read some of those questions, and I know James is ready to answer some of those. So please put your questions in the chat. We'll get through those as well. So James, again, thank you so much for joining today. I'm really excited to speak with you for a variety of reasons. Obviously, you being the executive director of the Mars Society. But, for those that don't know you and are new to the podcast and the Mars Society, can you share with us a little bit about your background and how you became involved with the Mars Society?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been someone that's been interested in space just my whole life. Like since I was a little kid, I've always just been so fascinated by space travel, becoming an astronaut, going back to the moon, going to Mars. It's been my dream to help that out my whole life. And I wanted, like growing up, I wanted to be in the Air Force, but then I grew to be 6'9", and so I couldn't be a fighter pilot like Top Gun. So I pivoted to being a tech guy. I went to work at Microsoft and worked there for 20 years successfully. But that whole time I was working at Microsoft, at night I was volunteering for the Mars Society, and I was trying to help out wherever I could. And so I remember, back in like the late 90s when the Mars Society was getting started, we did a big conference here in Seattle with the National Science Teachers Association to try to educate them about Mars. Robert Zubrin used to call me on my desk phone at Microsoft, and he was trying to get me to get him a meeting with Bill Gates and see if Bill Gates would fund the Mars mission. Long story short, Bill Gates was not interested in Mars. Looking back, he probably should have told me to talk to Paul Allen instead, but live and learn. But anyway, no, it's been a great ride, and I've been with the Mars Society since we got started and just try to help out wherever I could. And I had the great opportunity 2 years ago to become the executive director, and it is my dream job. I mean, what kind of job would it's like the blending your passion and your professional career at once. It's so amazing for me to get to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're so lucky to have you. I mean, it's been such a pleasure to get to know you and be a part of the Mars Society and see the vision that you have for us moving forward. And so, again, we're so lucky to have you. So thank you for stepping up and taking on that role. And, like you said, it's a dream come true. You get to mix your passion and what you want to do for a career. So you're in the right spot. So thank you. But as I mentioned in the introduction, you just served as commander for the transatlantic Mars Crew 261, which just finished the 12 Sol mission at the MDRS. Can you tell us about what were some of the mission objectives? What were some of the technologies that the crew worked on? I'd be interested to hear those things.
Yeah, absolutely. We packed in a lot in our 2-week mission. Our crew was a crew of professionals. We all were worked in the space industry. My XO has an incredible amount of analog experience. She was on the Amity 18 mission, which was a 5-week Mars mission in Oman. And she's had other experiences through the European Space Agency, such as zero-G flights. So she was super experienced. And we met at a conference. We actually met at the Mars Society conference in 2017 when she came. And we ended up working together on this mission for 4 years. We planned this mission out. And the crew complement and the set of experiments shifted a little bit over that time. But we worked on some of these experiments for 4 years. And, we had 16 different experiments. The ones that I worked on a lot of them were for the Mars Society and for the MDRS program. So one of the things we're trying to show with our virtual reality project is the ability for an astronaut on EVA to have direct support from someone in VR, but also conversely, if you're a VR participant, getting out to experience what it's like to go out in the field in Utah or to go out and explore Mars. And our long-term goal is that we have the ability, when the first people get to Mars, that people back on Earth can just put on a VR headset and see where they are and help them out, help them explore the area. We call that concept crowd exploring. So we've been working on that for about 6 years now. And as part of that project, we built a high fidelity digital twin of the entire MDRS campus in Utah, as well as a couple square kilometers of terrain around the campus. Now, with our mission that we just finished, one of the things we were going to try to do is have 4 of us put on a VR headset at the same time and have the map in front of us in VR and actually be able to plan out our EVAs. We also had a new capability using these devices called mesh-tastic devices that we would actually wear on our bodies during EVAs, and they would capture data of where we were, but also could send data back to the hab. So you can imagine if you have this map up in VR, you can actually see where the crew is out on EVA in real time and talk to them, get some information on like their, maybe how long they've been out, even medical things like their heart rate and things like that. That's all possible with this technology. So we were trying to show some of this end-to-end working. One of the challenges we have out in Utah when we go on these EVAs is that there's not great radio comms everywhere on the map. Some of our EVAs are pretty far from the hab. And so as soon as you go past a big sand dune and are on the other side of it, we lose radio comms. So it's a real safety issue. So one of the things we were trying to do as a crew was have a way for us to show where everyone is on the map. And we ended up using Garmin devices in addition to the mesh-tastic. And almost for the entire mission, whenever we had people out in the field, we knew where they were. And up to the point where on the last day, we actually ended up doing a safety drill where Aline and I went out in a rover and turned off our radios and didn't go where we said we were going to go. And then we clicked the button to send an SOS on the Garmin. To see, and then we just sat back and we tried to, let our crew figure this out, let our crew work together and figure out where we were and how they were going to rescue us and how, like, who was going to rescue us, right? All that stuff.
How did that go?
Yeah, and what was amazing is like 5 minutes after we clicked the SOS, we start hearing a drone flying.
Oh yeah.
So our crew engineer Julian's like trying to find us with his drone, and then they got there in 20 minutes. So we were 2 kilometers from the hab, and they found us in 20 minutes. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And that just shows these people working together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. Yeah, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you specifically about the VR because, when I had the opportunity to come to the Yuri's Night event and I got to experience the MDRS program and it was really cool. How can people access this program?
Yeah, it's actually free. We give it away. It's on MarsVR.com, and we have a version on the Steam video game platform. It's in apps on there. It's not a video game, it's an app. But yeah, it's actually available for anyone to try out. And we have chapters have been trying this out at different events and demoing it to people like what you had at Yuri's night. We've been doing that for about 4 years now. And so we had several thousand people experience this directly. And it's always like a really fun experience, especially for young people. Young people get VR a lot better than, you know, the aerospace executives of the world, for example, as one group. So, you know, it's a great tool for people that want to learn what we do at the Mars Society and what we do at MDRS. And we have some of the actual crew training that people go through in the VR, so you can actually do the crew training and kind of get ready for your mission before you come out to Utah. But yeah, it's really exciting, that project, and we're really happy that we're able to keep working on it year after year and adding these new capabilities to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can attest. It was really cool. It does take a little bit of getting used to. There's a little bit of kind of being disoriented at first, but then like, oh yeah, you're moving through it real quickly and getting to go inside the different rooms and in the greenhouse and going to the rover. It was pretty cool. So yeah, that's a cool technology and awesome that it's free and available for anybody that wants to access it. So I know for the crew, you guys were made up of individuals from North America and Europe, including 4 native French speakers. Were there some communication challenges, and how well did everyone work together, you know, being from different backgrounds and speaking different languages?
Yeah, I think communication is really important for crews. And when you get out to Utah, you're in this harsh environment and you're depending on each other. You're depending on each other for basic safety. And in some cases, if there's an emergency, saving someone's life. And so our crew, we had some real challenges at first. Not only we had a little bit of the language barrier, because we had 4 people that were native French speakers. They could speak English, but they had pretty thick accents. So there were times when, you know, I remember our medical officer, Audrey, was telling me that someone had hypothermia. And I was like, what's hypothermia? And she was saying hypothermia, hyperthermia, like heat exhaustion. But, you know, because the French folks eat the H at the beginning of those words, it's a little bit hard to understand. And then you add in the radio, and then you add in cultural differences. Yeah. And then, you know, one of the things we also experienced early on is like one crew member kept interrupting people because she was just excited to talk. Yeah. And so, and that rubbed another crew member the wrong way, like big time. So they actually kind of got into it a little bit. And I, as the commander, I was like, hey, everyone, kind of time out. Let's talk about this. Like, we need to make sure that we're not talking over each other, especially when we're on the radio. Because when you're on the radio and more than one person is talking, you can't hear anyone. So you need to kind of slow down a little bit, make sure you're communicating directly and effectively, use short sentences, and don't talk over people, and then let them give a chance to respond. And so once we had that conversation as a crew, things got way better. And by the end of the mission, everyone was communicating very effectively. And we were able, I just feel like, you know, all of our individuals on the crew were so talented, but together, working together as a team of 7, we were like superheroes. We could have done anything at the end of that mission. And that's evidenced by they were able to find us in 20 minutes with the safety drill.
Yeah, absolutely. No, communication is key, especially for those missions. And, you know, when you're in those critical, life-saving moments, you need to be able to communicate effectively and efficiently. But speaking of crew, I think you have a couple photos to share. Is that right?
I do. I'd love to share some of these photos. I'll go through them real quickly, but we had such great photography on this mission. It'd be a crime for me not to show some of these to everyone. Yeah. So there's me the first day. Before we went into sim, it was actually right after we went into sim, I had to take that photo. I'm standing inside the Musk Observatory's like little circle. We call that the cupola. So you're allowed to be in there without your spacesuit on. It's a very small area. And that's great at night when we're doing astronomy, taking photos there. This is the Atmos Finder experiment. So this is Erin Kennedy and I holding up the sail that we just tested. This is her wind-powered rover. This rover is designed to look for CO2 plumes on the south pole of Mars, which have never been photographed. So the idea would be you'd like let this rover loose and it would flow along the surface of Mars like tumbleweed for a year and try to capture some of those. And she tested this and she did an amazing job. That rover is custom built by her. She 3D printed all the parts. She designed the circuit board and had it printed, and she did all the code for it as well. And so she's an amazing engineer, and there's just a couple shots of us testing it. We did 6 different EVAs to help her test this rover, including rolling it down a hill at a 30-degree incline, which did not break it. So this was a lot of great engineering work and testing work that she did. And in fact, at the end, she had a little party mode going where the rover could dance with its sails and lights were flashing. Now, this is a piece of gypsum. Gypsum is a really cool mineral. It's basically a crystal that grows in the desert. It's from ancient ocean salt. And so we went on a really memorable EVA where 4 of our crew members went out and looked for gypsum in this location about 2 clicks north of the hab. And that was probably the most memorable EVA that those 4 people did. Here's Audrey on the left, or on the right, and Cecile, our green hab officer, on the left. So Audrey's doing one of her medical experiments. She had 2 on this mission. She was testing a blood pressure monitor, and she was overall measuring our cardiovascular health as analog astronauts, often taking several measurements a day with her 2 devices to see how the harsh Utah environment and all the changes that our bodies were going through to adjust to it was affecting our cardiovascular health. Because for astronauts, cardiovascular health is really important.
Of course, yes.
There's Erin Kennedy. She's our crew roboticist. That was Atmos Finder, the wind-powered rover, was her experiment.
Pretty cool.
And there's Julian, our crew engineer, and he's holding a custom drone that we tested out. This is a drone made by Adapa 360 out of Norway, and they build drones that have 360 cameras and VR capabilities. And they've been doing that for over 10 years. They're one of the partners on the MarsVR project. And we were happy to test out their newest drone, which is called Hawk 23. And we captured a little bit of footage with it. We had some challenges with it. Quite frankly, there were some issues with the power on it. But that's a high performance drone you could use for search and rescue. And we had 2 other drones with us that were more commercial, DJI Mavic, Mavic Air 2 and a Mavic Mini that we use more often than this Adapa drone. But this was a great example of us testing out new hardware out in the field and seeing how it worked in Utah. This is Cecile and Julianne in the Science Dome. That was our science lab, and you can see all the equipment they have. They're sort of setting up and unpacking things. Cecile was a tremendous microbiologist researcher on this mission. She grew plants and tested the use of spirulina to fertilize plants. So spirulina is blue-green algae, and it is a very important substance and basically technology, I think of it as, to do Mars agriculture. And one of the things we did on this mission is we actually had some Mars regolith simulant. It's called MMS-1. It was made for the 2007 Phoenix mission to Mars, and it's made from the desert sand in the Mojave Desert. So it's called MMS-1 Mojave Mars Simulant. We actually grew a tomato plant in that for the first time at MDRS. And we had another control that was some soil that we got from Utah from out on EVA as a control. And what's really interesting is we were able to grow the tomato plant with spirulina in the Mars soil, but not the Utah soil.
Interesting findings. Okay.
Yeah, and the reason is because the carbon cycle in the Mars soil was able to get going because it was more rocky soil that water could penetrate and the roots could take hold, whereas the Utah soil was really mucky, and you put water on it, it would just congeal. So that's the reason. But it's a really interesting finding. There's our crew on one of my favorite EVA we did to Candor Chasma, where Julian and I were both flying drones that day. For me, that was like 4 friends going to the beach almost. The sand there was just like the beaches in the Florida Gulf Coast that I used to go to when I was a teenager. So it was a lot of fun to do that EVA and fly drones and explore this Candor Chasma area, which is this huge canyon system nearby the hab. That's Julian with our photobioreactor. That was another experiment. This is a device that grows spirulina algae, and it's designed to be a prototype of a closed loop life support system. So you'd be able to grow spirulina algae and use it as not only a food supplement for the crew, but also it can produce oxygen and carbon dioxide and kind of help you with the air in the facility. And there's Cecile also with that same experiment. This was essentially a big bag of spirulina that was bubbling, and this photobioreactor had lights and helped it to grow, and also helped us harvest it out and replace the water. And it was fully automated. There's some code with it that kept everything working that Julian wrote. And we actually have this experiment still running in the Science Dome right now, where the next crew is keeping an eye on it, because we're going to go harvest the spirulina one more time and see how much this created overall over the course of a month.
See how it worked out. Okay, so it's the green part at the bottom, right? Is the liquid in that state right there in that photo? It's liquid.
Yeah, it's liquid. It's essentially distilled water with a whole bunch of spirulina, little tiny microorganisms that are green.
Yeah,
like it's cloudy. It's almost like apple cider vinegar if you shake up a bottle of that. Same kind of thing.
Okay.
But those spirulina are alive. They're little. They look like little worms. And we looked at them under the microscope, and their little tails were twitching. They're really cute. But you'd use that. We were using that as a plant supplement for tomato and basil plants.
Oh, sure.
There's a lot of other uses for spirulina.
Incredible. Okay, and that was the first plant that's been grown at MDRS.
Yeah, we proved you can grow a plant in Martian regolith simulant at MDRS using spirulina.
Okay.
That's we're writing that up. That's a finding. That's a scientific discovery.
Amazing. Okay.
And this is Julian with his guitar. He was our entertainment every night. We would sing Bon Jovi and Guns N' Roses, and we were doing Britney Spears a lot too. The women really, the French women really liked that song. So
transcends, culture and languages. Britney Spears. Okay.
Absolutely. There's Julian. He slept up in that loft, and every morning he was so happy. He was almost like peeking out of there, like the opposite of Oscar the Grouch, like happy Julian peeking out of the loft and saying good morning to us all. Let's see, that's him with the power system. So we have this really complex power system at MDRS. It's a solar array with a bunch of batteries and an inverter. And we also have a diesel generator that's the backup system. And so one of the challenges we have just running that system is it's so complicated. We're not always charging and draining the battery effectively. And so what Julian was trying to do was not only put in some new monitoring for mission support so they can monitor the power system better, but also have a smart grid at MDRS where it would actually detect the usage of different devices and tailor the battery usage and the power creation to that. Yeah. And so he worked on that a lot during our mission, and we handed the new monitoring off to mission support when we were done.
I can imagine various reasons why that would be important to monitor that information.
Yeah, and one of the things we learned, like one insight we had is the crews on Mars need constant power. One of the experiments we were going to try to do was electronic voting using the MarsCoin blockchain, and we couldn't set up our file server because the power kept shutting off like once or twice a day, which is kind of normal right now at MDRS. But that meant that our server kept going down, and we'd have to go push the button to turn it back on every time. So we ended up like not using that experiment very much and moved to the cloud and used the cloud a lot instead. So that was one finding we had, is if you want governance on Mars, power is critical to have the life support systems work, but also to have all your infrastructure work.
Yeah, absolutely. Power is key. Yeah. So many of your devices, your research, all of your communication, all of that relies on having the power. So yeah, exactly. Interesting finding. Okay.
There's still doing her craft with the plants. She did many different plant growing experiments with the control of some regular gardening soil. That's what that looks like, but also the Martian regolith and the Utah soil. This is not a photo of the movie Top Gun. That's Aline just getting ready for one of our EVAs. She was such a professional. We did a lot of safety training early on. We got all the crew members qualified to do EVAs. We did training on emergency procedures with them. They knew how to take off their helmet quickly, take off their backpack quickly, deal with any emergency situation that came up. And that's all thanks to Aline. She's actually a safety engineer for the European Space Agency. And so that was what she brought to the mission, as well as she was our crew astronomer. So she actually operated the solar telescope in the Musk Observatory the whole mission, captured some new photos of the sun and solar flares and sunspots. And she also did some work at another observatory in New Mexico, where we were trying to capture some photos of, I think, the Orion Nebula is what she was doing there. So yeah, she's still kind of processing some of that. But the skies out in Utah are amazing for astronomy. This is Erin Kennedy with her phone, and you can see the Orion constellation clearly visible
Yeah.
in front of her, as well as Sirius on the kind of the left side of her, the star Sirius. I mean, that's just an example of how clear the skies are out there. It's truly amazing to be out there at night.
Yeah. And is that one right in the middle? Is that Mars? From this angle, it looks just a little bit like it's got an orange glow to it.
I don't think that's Mars.
Okay.
I think that's one of the stars of Orion. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yep. I see the 3 belt there. Yeah. Immediately caught
Yeah,
my
that's
attention there.
Betelgeuse. Yeah, Michael
Yep.
Stoltz is saying. Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Thanks,
yeah.
Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
It is a red star. So.
There we go.
And
Thanks,
then there's the night I did our VR demo to the crew. I was showing them the new version that you can have people helping you out. And we actually had, when I got the headset on, Jeff Rayner, who's my partner on the VR project here in Seattle, was already in there, and we were able to talk to him in real time from the lower deck of the hab. So that was a lot of fun. That was a cool moment of connecting virtually with one of our trusted partners on the project, and having him say hello to the crew.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
There's Cecile and Julian, and so they're actually a couple, and it was really touching to have them be on the mission together.
Yeah.
And they were an excellent complement to each other, worked very well with each other. She was our green hab officer, he was our crew engineer, and they both worked on the AlgoCraft photobioreactor that had the spirulina. And there's me. We actually had a TV journalist come visit us from the Salt Lake City CBS affiliate, and that news package should be out soon. We're really excited to see what she comes up with. But she said this was her favorite story she's covered so far in her job. That was cool to hear. Interviewing us and talking about living on Mars. There's Aline getting ready for an EVA, and like I said, we all helped each other get on EVAs and did safety training and made sure everyone knew how to use the radios and how to put on the helmet, but more importantly, how to take it off in an emergency quickly. The way our suits work, we have these helmets, we have backpacks that have fans in them, and there's those 2 hoses. And so it's blowing air into your helmet. So it simulates a real spacesuit. It simulates like the sound a spacesuit would have. You're getting fresh air. You have the same weight you would have for a spacesuit on Mars. So it's kind of like you go out on an EVA and it's heavy backpacking. Essentially, it's analogous to that. And so you feel pretty tired. Like we did one EVA where we walked about 2 kilometers with those suits on, and it's a lot. You gotta take water breaks, and afterwards you feel pretty tired. But our crew we were such troopers. We actually packed in 19 EVAs in 12 days.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a record, but it's up there. Like most crews do maybe 8 to 10 for a 2-week mission, and we did 19. We were doing 2 a day for most of the days, and having crews rotate, crew members rotate, so nobody was doing 2 EVAs in one day. We had it all rotated out. We had our objectives planned out in advance, and we rotated the rovers we used, so we quickly determined that out of the 4 rovers, 2 of them were really good for long duration, and the other 2 probably couldn't make it. But we still tried to stress them out and get them as far as we could, and had frequent readings of the battery level. So we actually did a lot of good work just testing out all the systems at MDRS, kind of exercising the station that a professional crew would do to show everyone else kind of what they can do on a mission.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Kind of there's some crews that they spend most of their time just staying in the hab. But like when we get to Mars, it's all about exploring. I hope that the first crew that goes to Mars can explore like a huge area. And so that's what we were trying to model is let's try to go almost everywhere on the map that's interesting. And we did a lot of it. We did a lot of the longer traverses that most crews work up to. We were doing a long traverse on the first Friday of the mission on day 5.
Yeah.
So the second week was full of those.
Okay. Yeah, getting started right away. All right.
And then this is just what it would look like out the window for us. That's our window on Mars.
The view wake up.
It was an amazing experience. And then of course there's the last photo when we were all done. We did a nice little walk out in the desert together back on Earth and had a good time.
Wow, what an incredible experience.
It really was. It really was. And like this kind of experience, you bond with people, right?
Yeah.
Like those are lifelong friends now of mine. And but also, like I said earlier, they were just such amazingly talented individuals, but they working together, it was just magic. Like having everyone helping each other out, solving problems together. I feel like we could have done anything at the end of that mission. We could definitely live on Mars. We
Yeah.
lived very comfortably on Mars for 2 weeks.
Yeah, proved as possible. What would you say, peel back the layers a little bit. What were, your favorite parts? Obviously, your crew and getting to build those relationship with them, but what were your favorite parts? And, be honest, we want to hear, what was your not so favorite part? What was the not so fun, the down and dirty part that wasn't quite as enjoyable?
I think my favorite part was going out to Candor on that one EVA where we were both flying drones, Julian and I.
Uh-huh.
We were capturing footage for Aline's outreach videos that she was doing for the European Space Agency. So she was kind of there too to direct us and tell us what she wanted to see. And then Audrey was there. She was our health and safety officer. She was there to kind of reel in Julian and I so we didn't get too excited and do something stupid. That was like what I told her to do. Like just make sure that we're not doing anything dumb, like walking off a cliff.
Right.
We were out there pretty far, and it was a pretty huge canyon system, and there were like 100-foot drops that we were walking near. So that was kind of what we did. That was the most fun EVA.
Yeah.
For the other part of your question, I guess seeing my crew have conflict and making sure that I could support them all. Making sure that they had the support they needed. One of my early messages to them at my first briefing to them, the commander briefing, was like, I have your back. Like, and you guys have already shown me you have my back, so I'm going to have your back too.
Yeah.
And if you need help, just ask for it. And if you don't know what to do, like during your mission, if you're kind of idle, think about what you want to get out of this. And if you need help, let me know. Like I'm here too. And so basically, we work together well. And by giving them a little bit of trust and me being vulnerable, that really built the bond. And by the end of the mission, we were super tight.
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably a critical part of your, dynamic as a crew is everybody, being vulnerable and saying, hey, I need help with something, and everybody being there to step up when somebody does need help. Like you said, that's what bonds everybody together, and you come out stronger at the end. So that's great to hear that. And yeah, like you said, lifelong friends. What an incredible experience for you guys. Think you'll do it again? You're going to do another mission?
Well, my job now is to kind of run the program, right? And so, as well as the other things the Mars Society does. But one of the things I'm really excited about is I got to go do a lecture last Saturday night, the day after we were done with the mission, in a nearby town called Torrey, Utah, nearby where we are in Hanksville, Utah. It's about an hour away. And that area of Utah in the south is one of the least populated and underprivileged counties in America. And so I wanted to talk to folks that were local in the community, and I wanted to build some bridges with them on like so they understood what we were doing in Utah, because we've been out there 20 years now, and we've been part of the story of that area. There was a large dinosaur find that happened on our first mission on Crew 1 at MDRS.
Wow.
And it ended up being one of the biggest paleontology discoveries in the last 30 years. And now it's this major dig site. And a lot of people know about that are local, but they don't necessarily know what we're doing at the station or that we have that connection to it. And so, one of the things I talked to this audience of about 60 people at the Entrada Institute in Torrey. And they have a lecture series, and they invited me to it. And it was very timely because it was right after our mission. And so I was able to freshly give them my perspective on what it was like to command a crew there. But I also wanted to talk to them about how we could help their community. I asked the audience there, has anyone here read the Wayne County Economic Development Plan? And out of the 60 people, about 3 people's hand went up. One of them was the mayor, Tori, who was there. And I said, yeah, I've read it too. And in that report, it says 3 things. It says you guys need housing for young families. You need new sources of water. And there's an idea for a natural history museum in Hanksville. And I'd like to help you guys with all 3 of those. And I think the Natural History Museum could have a science component. It could have a discovery component because there's a pioneer history in that part of Utah as well. And so I think just having inroads into the community like that, and also bringing in the schools, bringing in some of the high school and middle schoolers to just visit the station is something we should do more of. We've done it in the past, but it's definitely something we should do more of, and I want to work on that. And so that lecture was very well received. I've already gotten a note from the mayor saying like, hey, if you need volunteers, just let me know. And so that was important too, that I had that experience with trying to connect with the local community.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's incredible. I mean, to reach out to the community, and I mean, it sounds like you've got support, specifically from the mayor. But yeah, how amazing would that be to, have some of those locals there that want to volunteer and participate. And like you said, bring a natural history museum to the area where such a historic find, what was made. That seems like the right place to have an institution like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. Well, I think it's a good time to take a couple audience questions. I see we've got a couple. I see we've got one from David. It says, what music do they play at MDRS? Does everyone agree on a playlist?
Yeah, well, we actually, like I said, were doing a lot of sort of karaoke at night with Julian on the guitar, and he was trying to learn different songs that we were requesting. I think the early favorite was some of the Bon Jovi songs. We all enjoyed singing those. I mentioned Guns N' Roses and a few other things we did. He used to be in a rock band, so he's very talented with the guitar. In addition to writing code and fixing everything, he was a great engineer, very useful
Jack of
for
all
the rest of
trades.
the crew. But that was a lot of fun. And we all had our own little playlists. We all would take time to listen to our own music as well. I did a lot of sort of meditation stuff, and we once did a guided meditation with 3 of us, and it was in a really good time where we all kind of needed a rest and needed a break. And there was a lot of deep emotions as part of this crew. For me, it was a lot of happiness because I'm doing what I love to do. I'm the commander for the first time. This is something we've been preparing for years, and it's coming together really well. There was that, but there was also, I was sad a little bit because on my last mission, Max Boyce was one of my crew members, and he died tragically last year and died too young. He was one of the people that worked on our analog suits with the Northern California chapter. And so Max, for me, was a reminder a lot on the mission. I dedicated my first EVA to him as commander. And every time we were suiting up, I was thinking about how he taught me how to suit up on EVAs. And so I was dealing with some of that during the mission. It was very fresh, even though I heard about his death last year. It was still very fresh for me to be there and to be in the place where he taught me some of this. And then also just the fatigue and the dehydration, that really affects your mood and affects your emotions as well. And we were all fighting off dehydration the whole mission because we're out there getting sweaty on EVAs, but also a lot of us flew into Utah. And my crew members flew from Europe into Utah, so they were all kind of already dehydrated, and then they get out in the desert, and it kind of hits you like a wall. One of the insights I had was, let's bring a bunch of electrolyte packets. So I had the Tom Brady TB12 electrolyte packets for everyone, and those were a hit because they were green tea flavored and lemonade and fruit punch and stuff like that. So that was really good, and that helped us stay hydrated a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, how incredible, an experience, one, to honor Max, like you said, he was, helping you get into your suit and EVAs. And I can imagine there are a lot of emotions, coming into a mission like this, beyond just dealing with the passing of somebody that you knew, a friend. But yeah, I can imagine it's quite tiring, fatigue, the dehydration, the jet lag, all of it rolled into one.
Time change.
Time change. But I imagine you come out of that experience a bigger, better person. Well, that's exciting. David also asks, is there any documentation or reports on quirks in simulations?
Yes, we've done a final mission summary, and we also have a research report. So we did 16 different experiments. I haven't had time to mention them all. Everyone should read the report that we wrote because some of the things we've done are really innovative. And basically we tried to cram in as much as we could in those 2 weeks. I mean, we had multiple layers of stuff happening. We were trying to do safety drills. We were trying to make sure people understood how to follow procedures at MDRS, but also give us feedback. Give me feedback on the procedures at MDRS? Are there things we should do differently?
Yeah.
Cecile gave me a great list after the mission of all the scientific equipment she didn't have and what she could have done if she had it. So that's something we'll take into the program to make it better. And that's kind of what I want the program to stand for, is we're continuously improving, we're continuously innovating and bringing in new technologies and new scientific approaches, and really doing some great work at the station.
Yeah, for sure. I see two questions regarding water. The first question is from Scott. It says, how much water do you use on the MDRS for a 2-week mission?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a water tank. I believe it's around 120-gallon water tank, and we were monitoring it very closely. Julian had a whole graph that had our ideal trend and where we actually were, what we were actually using for water. We had a challenge the first day we were there before we even got into sim. Somebody accidentally left the downstairs faucet on, just a trickle, and then we went out on a training and drove the rovers for about half an hour and came back. So in that time, we used 10 or 15 gallons of water.
Wow.
And that was precious water. Like that was, we were pretty shocked at first, because it meant that we were going to run out during the 2 weeks. We maybe only had enough for 10 days instead of 12. But we kind of rallied. We made sure everyone understood that we're supposed to conserve water and how to do that when you're doing things like washing dishes and taking short showers. We taught everyone how to do a Navy shower, where you get yourself wet, turn off the water, and then you soap up and clean yourself, and then you rinse yourself off. And you can do that, and it's just as effective as a regular shower, and you barely use any water doing it like that. And so our crew, we did it. We basically conserved our water, and we didn't run out. We actually were on the trend line all the way up to day 11 when we got a resupply for the next crew. So we, that was an early focus of ours, as well as the power, making sure that we weren't using too much power and understanding the power system overall.
Yeah. Like you said earlier, the power is key. Same with the water. It's critical. And you have to have a conversation with everybody about, how important this is. We really have to conserve the water. Yeah, that was a question from William. Was there a serious shortage of water, like a real mission might need to ration an accidental under provisioning?
Yeah, we all deal with that at MDRS. We all have a shortage of water of what you're used to.
Yeah.
And honestly, like as Americans, I think we should be more conscious of what we use for water and all consumables, because the stuff, I do believe in abundance, but it's a big world, and we all need to be conscious with what we're consuming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you there. Let's see. There's another question. It says, will the upcoming show Stars on Mars be filmed at MDRS?
Yeah, that one, no. That one they're doing in Australia. I think it's great. There's a show that's doing something similar to what we do at the Mars Society. I'm also really excited about NASA's new analog in Johnson Space Center in Houston. There was just a story today on CNN.com about it, and they mentioned MDRS favorably, that we've been crushing it out in Utah for 20 years, and they calculated how much analog time we've had. So I'm really excited about the fact that what we've been at for 20 years now at the Mars Society, is catching on. And now there's this TV show, and there's what NASA's doing and what ESA's doing. We should talk about Mongolia at some point too, because that's exciting. There's an analog that's being built in Mongolia, and we're part of that. We're part of that project and giving them assistance. And they just recently got funding from the president of Mongolia, and he's going to talk about it at his UN speech later this year, we hope. So, don't sleep on Mongolia either.
So cool. I'm sure we'll have more announcements that are going to come about specifically the Mongolia station. I see a question from James Melton. Who is the cook, or do you all pitch in?
Oh, we all pitched in. I mean, Audrey was amazing. I mean, French cooking is great. They can do amazing things with peas and carrots and rice. It's just, every meal was fantastic. Julian made crepes out of we have this dehydrated egg powder and dehydrated butter powder. And you just add some water to it and it's good as new. And so he was making crepes. I made some stuff. We had taco night a couple times. That was a big hit amongst the French people. They're not used to Mexican food. They don't know what that is, kind of thing. And so I was doing some kind of Tex-Mex stuff with tostadas and ground beef and taco seasoning. I made also a jambalaya, because it's interesting, Louisiana, that's basically French cuisine with an American twist. So it's kind of both. So I made this jambalaya dish, and I put in a bunch of like tuna and things, and that was one of the hits of the mission as well. But we had a thing where everyone would contribute to the chores. Everybody would cook or clean, and we all pitched in, and we actually didn't need to ask anyone to do it at the, kind of midway and towards the end of the mission, because everyone was just eager to help.
Yeah, everybody steps in. I see a question. Are you inspired to do another mission at MDRS?
Yeah, I definitely want to continue working with Aline and some of all the others on the crew to maybe plan out future missions. I think there's a lot of good work our folks can do, our crew can do to help the program and to help just humans to Mars. Yeah. Overall, I mean, we touch so many areas of research and disciplines. Like even the way we did our EVAs and the way we had our EVA monitor, where we can see where people were out in the field. We solved some of the challenges with safety with radio comms, where there's not full coverage on the radio on all parts of the map. With our Garmin devices, we had eyes on everyone at all times. We always knew when people were safe. Yeah. And so we definitely can show more things that the program could do, I think, in future missions. So yeah, absolutely. I'd love to start planning another mission with the folks I was just with.
Yeah. Well, speaking of other missions, how can people get involved? How can people become a volunteer, or how can somebody go on a mission at MDRS?
Yeah, it's open to everyone to apply. You can go on the MDRS website, and you can either apply individually or you can apply as a group of people. We've had lots of successful crews from different universities that have applied together. I'm thinking of Purdue and Embry-Riddle and Soup-Arrow in France. Those universities usually send a crew every year, and those are some of our best crews. But we also assemble crews from just amazing individuals like this one. We assembled this crew from folks from the French chapter and folks from America and Canada. And we'll do more crews like that, where we're assembling these amazing individuals that apply and trying to match them up with people that would be complementary to their skill set and to all the crew roles that we have.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure I can see it in the chat. We have some, enthusiasts that are going to be interested in filling that application so that they can get a chance to serve on a mission. I see another question here. You've talked about the plants and what you were able to grow a tomato plant. One of the questions is, what plants are you currently growing at GreenHab?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have cherry tomato plants going. We have basil, mint, and we have some salad greens. Those are the four main ones, and we harvested all four of those during our mission. And the crew that's there now, where Megan Kane is the commander, are doing the same thing. So they're supplementing the food that they have that's shelf stable with some of the fresh greens and tomatoes and herbs from the GreenHab.
Yeah. Are you guys eating any of those? Like, okay, this cherry tomato is ripe, I'm gonna pop this on my salad, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, we made tea with the mint plants almost every night. There was also sage. I didn't mention that. So we would have sage and mint tea that Cecile would make on the stove. There's a photo of her doing that in my photos there. And yeah, we absolutely would supplement what we were doing with the stuff from the GreenHab. And we actually tried spirulina too. I put that on some rice, and it's got an interesting texture. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did that taste?
It tasted okay, but it's kind of the aftertaste that's a little different on that one.
Okay, all right, spirulina, maybe not the go-to. I see a question here that piques my interest. Has it ever been discussed to attempt to send a family, like parents and kids, on a mission to MDRS?
We have done that in the past. We've had like preteen kids with their parents there. So yeah, there's nothing prohibiting that from happening on a future crew.
Excellent. Okay. And one thing, I know we're getting close to the end of time, but one of the things that, James, I specifically wanted to ask you, was regarding a potential crew of all women. the idea about a female-led or an all-female crew to the moon or Mars.
Yes.
What's your opinion about that idea?
So one of the findings we've had with the program, and this is based on some of the work that was done by Inga Papavite during her University of Utah PhD, she looked at crew dynamics and she found the insight that women perform in some cases better than men at communication and collaboration in an analog situation. So we've actually had, Ashton, we've actually had many all-women crews. We had actually 3 last field season. So it's not really something I think we need to prove or show frequently anymore, but it is, our crew, for example, was heavier on women than men. And we did that a little bit deliberately because we wanted to make sure that everyone was working together well. And just the individuals we selected were the best at those roles and were complementary to each other. But no, I definitely think that when we get to sending people to Mars, that having an all-women crew is an option. But there's also great examples of men that are good at communication and collaboration and other skills as well. So I don't think we should gender select too much. I think it should be all about who's the best for the role.
Right. Yeah. The best candidate, who has the best experience, the right education, the knowledge, who blends well together. I agree with you there. That's a good point. Well, as we're beginning to wrap up, can you tell us what's on the horizon? What are some of the projects that you're working on? Obviously, we talked about VR. We're talking about the missions. What are some of the other things that you are working on with the Mars Society? Some of the other projects.
Yeah, we just published the telerobotic book from the contest we did last year. We're going to start promoting that. That's actually out on Amazon right now. You can go pick that up. And we've done 3 books now based on the contest we've had. The Mars Colony Design book and the Mars City State Design book were the other 2. We also did a high school engineering program last year that was very innovative. We had 40 students. They all worked together to design missions to Mars. There were 5 teams, and they all finished the 6-week program last summer. And some of those students have gotten scholarships to universities based on, in part based on being in that program. But they all got inspired about Mars and they all want to enter STEM careers. So we see that program as very successful as an education program, and we're going to try to scale it up and do it again this summer. So we're starting to work on that. Obviously, the conference in October, we're going back to ASU, Arizona State University. We had a great conference there last year, and so we're going to do that again. We'll also have a component where we hopefully go down to Biosphere 2 and see the new Mars analog SAM that just started up there. And by the way, as part of this mission, I also presented at the Analog Astronaut Conference while we were in SIM. We also had a link up with the High Seas crew in Hawaii. That was a first of our crew and the High Seas crew talking to each other while in SIM. They were just starting their mission. We were just ending ours. So it was kind of a fun handoff. And I gave them a little tour of all the experiments. That was a lot of fun. And then we had the journalists come. But yeah, I mean, basically, there's a lot still for us to do with the results of our mission. We're going to be generating more content, and we're going to have things like a playback of one of our EVAs with all the drone footage and photos and audio that we captured for that. That'll be fun to see. And there'll be other announcements we have throughout the year as well that we're working on things. Mongolia is one of them. We're really excited to have the first mission in Mongolia later this year, hopefully.
Yeah. A lot of projects, a lot of things happening. It's a very exciting time. It's cool to see these projects happening at the same time that we're seeing the Artemis missions, Occupy Mars. It's cool to see those things kind of happening in tandem. Why, speaking of the annual conference, why should someone come to Arizona this fall?
It's a fantastic experience to meet fellow like-minded people at the Mars Society. Every conference I've ever been to, going back to the late 90s, I've met new people, met new friends that we end up working together on projects like Aline and I with this mission. And so it's a great place to network. It's a great place to see amazing talks. We're going to have a lot of the speakers from NASA, SpaceX, and Europeans and folks from elsewhere around the world. We had the Mongolian delegation come last year. They brought the house down with their plan for an analog. And so, yeah, the conference is always fun. And we also have a virtual option. So if you're not able to come in person, If you just join the Mars Society, become a member, it's only $50 a year, $25 for students and senior citizens. You can attend the conference virtually for free, watch it on the live stream, and interact with everyone that's there.
Excellent. I'm sure that a lot of those individuals that are listening to us right now, are going to be tuning in for the annual conference. So, like James said, if you're interested in becoming a Mars Society member, go to marssociety.org. You can join there. Also, if you're interested in going on a mission to MDRS, you can also find the information, the application there as well. If you want to become an ambassador, there is the ambassador program as well. Check it all out on. Yep, there you go. Check it all out on the Mars Society website. I'm trying to find my patch here. There we go. Yep, I got to get this one added. So yeah, thank you, James, so much for joining the podcast today. This was excellent. I really appreciate you sharing your experience going on your MDR mission. A lot of valuable information. I'm looking forward to watching the drone footage that you mentioned, reading some of the research articles that come out from the mission and all the experiments. So thank you again so much for joining. Thank you everybody for tuning in. You had excellent questions. It's been another great episode, and I'm just so thankful for everyone's participation. Thank you, James. Thank you, Michael Stoltz. Thank you, Michael and Leah at Liftport. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Appreciate all of you, and remember, the best is yet to come. There will be more exciting, literally the best is yet to come. I'm so excited. We have some amazing guests that are coming up in the next couple months, so stay tuned for those announcements. Again, thank you so much, James, for joining.
Thank you so much, Ashton. I'll see you on Mars.
I'll see you there. Bye, everybody.